Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and today we have not only an amazing guest and an amazing fellow entrepreneur, but I'm convinced that the downstream effects of her work is going to create even more entrepreneurs in the future, because this is someone who not only has worked inside of the world of education, but who is really transforming the world of education. So let me introduce you to her. Her name is Dr. Melissa Feiger. Dr. Melissa believes that students succeed when they choose what and how they learn. She taught middle school science for 9 years and helped create the district's middle school science curriculum. Outside of the classroom, Melissa co-led and coached the Science Olympiad team, led and chaperoned in Springfield, DC, and Galapagos student trips, and coached intramural tennis, which all of you know that any chance I get, I'm going to weave some tennis analogies into today's conversation. Melissa earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois in elementary education with middle school endorsements in science, social studies, and language arts. While teaching, she earned her master's in education from National Louis University in English as a second language. So, as someone who comes from an immigrant family, ESL programs are so near and dear to my heart, and a degree in special education, and her PhD in curriculum studies from DePaul University. Her published dissertation focused on how the level of democracy impacts the education system in various countries. And you're going to see countries are going to come up a lot today, because Melissa believes that we need to be tapping into the world of being global citizens. Currently, she's an adjunct professor at Truman College, and I'm so excited for her to introduce all of you to her business and what her initiative and mission is. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Dr. Melissa Feiger. All right, Melissa, so much good stuff we're going to dive into today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I'm really excited to be here.
Heck yes, I'm excited because every guest that comes on, I obviously love all of their businesses, but in your case, not only do I love what you're doing, but I love your backstory and how much you've been living in this world. So take us beyond the bio. Who's Melissa? How did you get into all these cool things?
Sure. So I've always wanted to be a teacher. That's something that I dreamed of since I was in preschool. I actually used to play school instead of house, where my stuffed animals and my dad would be my students. Then the dream came true. I graduated college, and I was able to get my first classroom teaching job in middle school science. And I learned that I really loved the project-based learning in the curriculum, and really wanted to make sure that students were driving their own learning and able to learn in a way that they were able to explore their passions. Now, the way I got here was I ended up getting my doctorate in curriculum studies while I was teaching, and I decided it was time to leave the classroom that I'd been in for 9 years and open up my own microschool so that I could take the project-based learning, love of STEAM, love of global citizenship to the next level, and not be confined by the current system that is the public education system in the United States.
Yeah, it's so interesting hearing that overview, Melissa, because education is obviously so near and dear to your heart. But at the same time, what I'm hearing from you, and obviously I've seen it in the work that I've researched before we got together, and kind of why I teased at the very top of today's episode about how your work is probably going to increase the amount of entrepreneurs out there. And I'll narrow it down right there. A few words that you said in your overview of exploring their curiosity, learning through that curiosity. And looking back, I'm a product of the public school system, thankfully, in the state of Massachusetts, which we have amazing schools up in Massachusetts. But the one knock that I will have, Melissa, is that it's a set system. Every student goes through the exact same thing. Sometimes I felt like a fish out of water. Talk to us about that, exploring their curiosity, because that is a bit different from traditional education.
Yeah, so I think it's important to really cater to what the students actually desire to learn and how they want to learn, instead of forcing certain curriculum on them, which unfortunately is what tends to happen in the public school system. And this allows them to not only thrive in school, but also grow and actually enjoy the learning process. Unfortunately, a lot of times students these days, their attention span is very short due to technology, and they just want to learn something that is actually important to them and meaningful, and who doesn't want to do that? So that's where this idea evolved from for this micro school.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny hearing you say that. I don't have kids of my own just yet, but I do have a niece and nephew. They're 7-year-old twins, and so they're in first grade right now, and I see what they're studying in first grade. But then I also see when Uncle Brian rolls into town and I fire up Midjourney, for example. I love creating AI art just for fun. And Savannah, my niece, her curiosity is so piqued. And Melissa, the prompts she comes up with, the things that she thinks of as a 7-year-old, I hope, I don't know much of what they're doing in school, but I hope somewhere there's an educator that's facilitating that curiosity, inviting her to go deeper into it. How do we get there? And I'm going to pick on that term that you're using because a lot of people probably aren't familiar with it, microschool. How does a microschool open up these additional avenues and so many more possibilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So the microschool movement is not necessarily new, but it is growing exponentially, especially since COVID. A lot of parents were pulling their kids from school and just started to homeschool them. And a lot of those homeschool situations actually turned into micro schools where other neighborhood kids would come to their house as well and learn in a fun environment, something that they wanted to enjoy doing. They would get out into the community and be able to take field trips and learn real world application problems and learn how to solve them. So that's a micro school really focuses on personalized learning for the student. There are micro schools who have 6 students. There are micro schools who have 30 students. So it really does allow for us as educators to personalize learning towards not only the learning needs of that student, but also the interests and the passions of that student.
Yeah, so well said. Well then, Melissa, you've got to introduce listeners to my favorite micro school that I've come across, of course, Wander Through Wonder Academy. Talk to us about the foundations there, because obviously it's the product of all of your experiences, cumulative in life, but also you've taken it upon yourself. You've used your initiative, and we're going to talk about your entrepreneurial mind as well, but you've used all of that to launch your own micro school. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I actually am partnering with a larger company. It's called Changemaker Education. And basically those people in the Changemaker Education world, they coach you in how to create and open your own micro school. So just to be clear, it's not a franchise. This is my own school. But the nice thing is that I'm not alone in the process. I'm a part of a cohort of founders around the country who essentially want to change the system for the better. And so what I decided to do is I wanted to open my micro school because I believe that the public education system does need to change. And the one way that I see this happening is through the micro school movement. We are able to show what can be done truly in a public school system. What I'm doing can be done without tuition-based schools. So this is something that I hope is actually going to transfer all over the country and just become the norm. But I wanted to create a space where students were able to be themselves and have their own space. Especially my middle school is geared towards middle school students. So adolescents, as we know, it's a very challenging stage. And when they're coming to my micro school, they're going to be able to feel comfortable, accepted, affirmed. It's their space to live in. And so they don't have to ask to go to the bathroom. They don't have to ask if they can have a snack. They don't have to ask what materials they're allowed to use. Everything is theirs to use. The world is their oyster, and I'm just trying to facilitate and provide that education to encourage love of learning.
Yeah, so well said. You said that the world is their oyster, Melissa. And of course, every micro school is different. Everybody has their own approach, but you're kind of teasing some of your unique recipes here in the way that you're talking about education and your view of it. And of course, the world being your oyster, and obviously how prevalent global citizenship is. That messaging is so prevalent. Everything that I looked up about you personally and your business, that just keeps appearing. Why is that such a central theme of the way that you operate?
I truly believe that as the world becomes more globalized, we need to incorporate this global citizenship education into the mainstream education, and it's just not there yet in the public school system. And so I want to provide this opportunity for my micro school students to be able to learn how to communicate with others in different cultures, even if they don't speak the same language, to learn about problems that are going on around the world and how we can solve them together, even with all the hardship going on. What can we do to find solutions? And I think it's really important that, especially at the adolescent stage, where there's a lot of me, they care about themselves. It's also a great time to introduce different people in the world and how to be compassionate and empathetic. And I strongly believe that learning about other cultures and immersing themselves in other cultures, so traveling around to different countries or even to different states, different cities, has a huge impact on student learning and student growth.
Yeah, and Melissa, I'll tell you, I'm a big sucker for quotes. There's one quote that I always botch, and it is the Mark Twain quote. So I actually pulled it up knowing that we would definitely be talking about this today. The Mark Twain quote, I love that quote where he says, "Don't let school get in the way of your education." That seems so prevalent to the type of work that you do. But the quote that I always botch is Mark Twain also said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime." Melissa, it seems like this is so in line with your attitude there. A lot of people will be thinking, well, yeah, we took geography when we were young. We learned about other cultures. It seems to me like you're taking this to a way different level. We use these terms of immersive so much, especially when it comes to language learning, is of course you learn a language much faster when you're immersed in it. How is this manifesting into your actual implementation of curriculum?
Sure. So each year in the Microschool, we're going to focus on a specific country of the world and learn about the culture and their language and the different types of ways of living in that country. And then we're going to actually travel to that country at the end of the year. And so this year we're focused on Costa Rica. And at the end of the school year, we're going to go there and actually do STEM activities. And we're actually going to be able to go into a school there and meet other students in Costa Rica, and just really actually be in the country that we've been learning about instead of just reading about it and researching.
Yeah, I want to turn the spotlight a little bit onto you personally, Melissa, because what I really appreciate about your story is that you're doing these things and you identify these things, but there's a difference between seeing possibilities and seeing changes that you can make and actually putting in the legwork to actually do it. And I know that it has been a ton of work for you to get to where you are with Wander Through Wonder, but what was that catalyst? What was that defining moment where you said, I'm not going to just think about this, I'm going to actually do it? What did that moment look like? Because I imagine it happened way before you actually opened this micro school.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's funny, when I was teaching in the public school system, I used to joke with my colleagues, hey, why don't we just open our own school? Like, you can be the science teacher, you can be the English teacher. And I started kind of thinking like, wait, can I actually do that? And so I actually honestly didn't know that I could. And then I found Changemaker Education, and they helped me to make this dream a reality. And now I'm, about to sign a lease on a space, and I'm recruiting students, talking to families in the community, and it is real and it is happening.
Yeah, I love that story. Not to get too business focused. Obviously, I see the world through the lens of entrepreneurship in so many occasions, but basic business, as we always talk about, understand your ideal customer, understand who it is that your business serves. Obviously, you fleshed so much of this stuff out, but when people do ask you about Wander Through Wonder, what are those ingredients that you talk about? Who makes the perfect student to come into your world and do things the way that you see them?
So students that come to Wander Through Wonder are those who are not feeling success in the traditional school setting. So a lot of those students would be neurodiverse students, those who are not wanting or able to and shouldn't feel like they have to sit in a desk all day doing worksheets, listening to teachers stand at the front of the room. They want to be moving, those who have learning differences. And that includes those who need an extra push, and also those who are not being challenged enough. So we also have students in the current traditional classrooms who are feeling really bored with what's going on with curriculum and standards. And so my school is great for students who just want to get up, move, do things, go out into the community, and not be sitting in a desk all day.
Yes, you're preaching to the choir here in front of an audience of entrepreneurs, Melissa, and I love that about your mission and all the things that you work on. You brought up that term of success, and so many of us felt it. You and I both felt it when we were students through the traditional education system of success means what? Just grades. Like, that's literally how we were measured. I'm sure a lot of people listening, and we've had incredible education-based entrepreneurs, and obviously we have a lot of listeners with kids and just a lot of stakeholders involved in the type of work that you're doing. What's your view on defining success for students? To pull out another quote, I always love that Albert Einstein quote of, if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it'll live its whole life thinking it's an idiot. And of course, it's absolutely not. It's just being judged the wrong way. So Melissa, it's a loaded question, but how should we be defining success for students?
So it's really important, first of all, for students to feel that success. And even if it's comparatively or relatively a small success within the hour, like, yes, you sat down and you read a chapter of a book, or yes, you came up and you drew out an idea for a prototype, right? So even those small things are considered successes at Wander Through Wonder. And it's also really important to understand the growth of a student and be able to show them that. So at Wander Through Wonder, we have portfolios that students create throughout the year. We use this instead of grades like A's, B's, C's, and this helps the student see how far they've come throughout the year. They would go from not knowing what maybe the engineering design cycle is to fully implementing it and coming up with a prototype to solve a problem. So that's what I'm defining success as. If the student is growing successfully throughout the year, they feel comfortable, they're enjoying their learning, then they're on the right track to success.
Yeah, I love the way you talk about that, because what I can't help but think of the more that I talk to you is just how many different solutions we'll come up with by going through a different path of education. Because you and I sat in history classes and English classes and math classes, and of course we did that traditional and it served us in various ways. But what are all the things that we never got into? What are all the things we never got exposed into? And I think as an adult, the more that I let my curiosity lead me, the more that I go deep into studying what chess grandmasters are saying. Am I gaining like math skills by learning about chess grandmasters? No, but the way that they see the world changes the way that I see the world. So I so appreciate all of those things. And especially, we live in a world that is changing, Melissa. Like, we can't help that. Especially AI is shaking the whole world up. How do you think AI is impacting education? Because whether we want to acknowledge it or not, I ask anyone that I know that has teenage kids, I'm always like, are you guys using ChatGPT as part of school? And they all say yes, even though our teachers don't want us to. So Melissa, what's your take on how AI is shaking up the world and changing education?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm about to say might be controversial among educators, but I think as educators, we have to embrace AI, we have to embrace ChatGPT, and know that we can't stop students from using it, nor should we. It's a resource that they need to be able to learn appropriately. They need to understand how to use it so that they are able to use it to their benefit, instead of us saying, no, you can't use this, you have to do your own thing. I mean, I'm using ChatGPT all the time as an entrepreneur to, brainstorm ideas, right? And so it's important to actually see it as a tool for students, and guide them in the proper use of it instead of just completely taking it away. And that's really important, because if you try to take the entire process of using AI away, the students are going to want to use it more, especially when they're in middle school. And so why don't we just say, hey, we can use this, but we can use this in appropriate matters so that you are still growing and successful.
Yeah, see, but that to me, we're really getting at why I believe that entrepreneurs are the change agents here, because you outed yourself there as an entrepreneur who's doing this work, is that you are pushing the envelope. You're finding better ways to operate as an entrepreneur. And that then, of course, trickles down into your curriculum and trickles down into the way that you help and encourage students to embrace those things. So that's why I think that entrepreneurs, of course, if I'm the superintendent of a large school district in Boston, I'm not looking for all of those ways. I've got 500 other administrative and traditional things that I need to be focusing on. So, Melissa, with that hat on as an entrepreneur, why now, in hindsight? Obviously, you've been a traditional educator as well. Why do you believe that this vehicle of you doing this under the hat of an entrepreneur is really the impactful way for you to move this mission forward?
Yeah, so as a public school teacher, I always wanted to change the system for the better. I always thought it needed to change. This is not new. Educators all over the country want it to change. But the problem is that it's really hard to do that within the system as one teacher, or even a team of teachers. So there were a lot of times when I was in a public school setting, and I would, try to push the envelope, be innovative, do something different in my classroom. It didn't get looked at as, yay, innovative, great job, you're a great teacher. It looked like you're not following the curriculum. And so I just felt like I was doing an injustice to the students by being part of that system, and felt like I needed to step away, open this micro school, and actually do what I feel is best and I know is best, and show the system this is what it can be. We can do this in the public school setting. There's no reason we can't. And I think this micro school movement is actually the best way to do this.
Yeah, it's really fun hearing you talk about that, because it does feel like a little bit of a push-pull right now, but so many of your answers keep coming back to the fact that I hope this is a model and I hope it's widely adopted in the future. It's so clear that that's part of your mindset. And hearing about your internal struggles within traditional institutions who may not be as excited about innovation and trying new things and experimentation, which are things that entrepreneurs are oh so good at, makes me wonder, Melissa, what's the reaction like from parents, from students? Because I think that those are the ones that ultimately will drive the change by rejecting the traditional way of doing things.
Yeah, so when I was teaching in the public school setting, the teachers who supported me, they liked what I was doing. The administrators, some of them were a little nervous, because they're in charge of making sure we get the curriculum done. But the parents and the students always loved what we were doing. Now, it's interesting though, because they don't necessarily know what curriculum we have to get through, what the standards are, right? And so they're just seeing their children learn and they're excited about it. And that's where the students thrive. And that's what parents want. They're not necessarily figuring out like, oh, how is she going to get through the curriculum if they're doing this big project? They just want their students to succeed and feel happy going to school and want to learn. And so when I'm doing this micro school, I'm hearing that in the community in Chicago, yes, we need this. The parents in Chicago are telling me we need something like this because the current system is not working for students who learn differently.
Yes, I love that. Change step by step, literally. That's how markets change, is through the consumers taking action and finding better solutions. And kudos to you, Melissa, for being part of that solution. I want to go back to you as a teacher, joking with your fellow teachers of, hey, we should start our own school, to obviously now you're doing it, Melissa. How has that differed from expectations? Because every entrepreneur in their own entrepreneurial journey, it's never as easy as we thought it would be. It's never the things that we thought we'd be focusing on of, oh, I'm just going to start this, and I'm going to get these students, and then it's going to be smooth sailing from there. I can focus on curriculum. I can focus on all those things. Of course, it never quite works out that way. How has it been different from what you expected?
Yeah, I'm telling all my friends and family that as I've watched people, continue with their startups, and I'm seeing them like from day one on their phones. They're on their computers, they fall asleep with their laptop. I always wondered why they were doing that. And then when I opened my Microschool, I realized I'm doing the same thing. And this is a full-time job to get this school up and running, and I'm doing every piece of it, right? So I'm trying to get the word out about the school. I'm enrolling students, I'm meeting parents, I'm leasing a space, I'm getting that ready. And so it's been a lot of work, which I knew it would be, but it's been also very interesting to see, the trial and error, what works and what doesn't work when I'm out in the community. What are people responding to? And how can I make sure that I am building something that the community needs and wants?
Yeah, Melissa, I have to inject this because I teased at the top of today's episode. I need to throw a tennis analogy in there. And tennis can often be a very solo sport where a lot of times you can't even get coaching from your coach who's on the sidelines watching, as you have to work through these problems alone. All credit to you. Everything that I've seen about the way that you operate is you're a big believer in partnerships. And it just seems to me like you're not leveraging kind of the solo, the lone wolf approach to things, which kudos to you. I believe that's the correct way that we should all be doing things. I always love that concept of a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's why I'm excited to have you in the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur family from here. But with all of that in mind, what has that attitude been? Because I'm sure that there are nights where you do feel alone in this journey, and you do recognize the monumental responsibility that you as the founder specifically have. How do you navigate all those internal things that are essential to the entrepreneurial journey? We all go through them, but it's fun to hear you talk about them publicly here on the air.
Yeah, so I try to stay positive, right? Because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we fail a lot. I mean, that's the world that we're in as entrepreneurs. So just knowing that I am going to fail in certain things and then try it a different way, and that might succeed, it might not, and just keep going. And also knowing that I'm changing the education system by just this one micro school. That's the hope, right? And so that's what's driving me. But I do want to say I have a great coach. I've got a great cohort. Like you said, I'm creating these partnerships in the community. People have been so welcoming. We have a lot of small businesses in Chicago who have been willing to give me advice and who have been willing to partner with me and said, yeah, let's do something during the year with these kids. I even have, small businesses donating gift cards and coupons and things like that for their own small businesses. So I can take that with me and use it like at tabling at a prize wheel. So, everyone's helping me out. My family has been amazing. And, it's a long journey. Everyone says not to quit your job before you have a job. That's kind of what I did, right? But this is my job, this is my role, and this is what I'm doing. So I'm making my own way.
Yes, I so appreciate those insights, Melissa. And listeners, let that be an inspiration for you. From Melissa's own journey, is that a lot of times it does feel like we're alone, like a tennis player out there just trying to figure things out. Why do I keep hitting it into the net? But the truth is, people will want to help you. You'll be shocked what doors open when you have that mindset and that attitude. You're going to find so many others that share. And Melissa, it sounds like in your local region in Chicago, you're finding so many people that share that abundance mindset. And it's a reflection of you, of course. So huge kudos to the work that you're doing. And you talk about people giving you advice. I always like asking this question at the end of every episode, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and knowing that you're one of us, a fellow entrepreneur yourself, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
My one piece of advice is just to follow your vision. Whatever that vision is, yeah, it's going to evolve, it's going to grow as you continue the journey, but follow it, because in the end, you're going to make positive changes in the world with that vision. And that might be quitting your job and taking a risk in yourself, right? It might be leasing a space when you may not be ready, but you've got to keep going with the vision, because if you really believe in what you're trying to do, then other people will also believe it.
Yes, Melissa, I feel like you just revealed part of the way that you think, even in that advice, because you said believe in your vision and follow your vision. To me, what's so clear about that is that I would imagine when you walk through the streets and you see a physical space, you envision your school. You can actually picture it. And of course, that makes it so much easier for you to turn it into reality. And so, listeners, start picturing your success. This is powerful advice that Melissa's leaving us with here today. So, Melissa, I'm clearly a very big fan of what you're doing. I know that you're such a big part of a much needed solution for society. We're not just talking about one industry. What our kids go through in education, that's going to transcend that. And it transcends education, it transcends politics, it leaks into all facets of society. So with that in mind, for listeners who want to see all this cool stuff that you're doing, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
So you can go to the website, wonderthroughwonder.org. On the website, you'll find my social media, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Feel free to find me on LinkedIn under Melissa Feiger, and I'd be happy to chat with anyone who wants to talk about what they're doing and how to be a successful entrepreneur.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find all of Melissa's links down below in the show notes. No matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode, you can go to her business website, her Microschool website, where you'll also find all those links as well. So trust me, as someone who has gone through all of Melissa's links, it is so easy to find her and to get a hold of her if you want to continue the conversation. So Melissa, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I really appreciate that.